our cat behavior workshop. Welcome to our cat behavior workshop with Molly. Today we will be focusing on feline nutrition, which is just, I think, such an important topic for everyone in the community, anybody who has a cat, fosters, adopters, all the things. I know many of you guys are not with Dallas Pets Alive, so I wanted to welcome you and tell you guys a little bit about us. My name is Janae Bennett, and I am the foster director with Dallas Pets Alive. We have been around for 10 years now. This is our 10th anniversary, and we are located in DFW. If you are not from the Dallas area, go ahead and comment in the chat so we can see where everybody is viewing from. Awesome. So we focus mostly on North Texas. We started out with Dallas Animal Shelters, and we have extended our help to Mesquite, Irving, Garland, recently Waxahachie as well. And we're even branching out to a couple other shelters in the area who need our help. So we started out as mostly a dog rescue. And then in 2015, someone convinced someone that we need a litter of cats and their mom. And now since 2015, we have had lots of cats in our program. And actually our current numbers from 2020, 2021, and this year, we have had more cats in our program than dogs. So in 2021, we had 429 cats saved. So we are now equally a cat rescue as a dog rescue. And so we have cats who have various issues in medical and behavioral needs. And we started this connection with Molly to help support our cat fosters and the community. So Molly is going to take it away, and if you could keep yourself muted during this time, and if you have questions, you can pop them in the chat. And I see Kitten and Marvin are here, so that is important. She's my assistant feline director. So, and there's her Marvin, her assistant.
I don't know how to mute.
Oh, I can help you. There we go. Yeah, awesome. And thank you so much, Molly, for doing these for us. We love you and have such success with these.
Well, thank you for making them possible. And let's just get started. I'm going to jump in here. Let me get this going. Oops. There we go. Now, let me minimize this over here. Hang on a second. How do I? There we go. Okay, now you can see me and the slides as well. So welcome to Cat Nutrition. As I was saying, for some of you who joined late, this is, I think, the most important seminar I've done to date. So I'm super glad that you could join today. This is important. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a certified feline training and behavior specialist. I'm also a certified cat behavior consultant through the International Association of Behavior Consultants, Animal Behavior Consultants. I'm a certified fear-free trainer, and lots of other things. And basically, I've been working in shelters for decades. And because of that work and seeing so many cats come into the shelter, I founded a nonprofit called Cat Behavior Solutions, where I amass information on cat care and cat behavior. I have a weekly podcast called Cat Talk Radio, and we're coming up on our 200th episode. So there's lots and lots of free information out there. On my website is a bunch of information for both shelters and fosters and cat parents. And I encourage you, if you haven't already, to explore that and share it with your adopters and cat friends and anybody about cats. So our agenda today is hefty one, and we're the reason why cat nutrition is the most important seminar I've done so far, is because it's the fundamental foundation for behavioral and overall health, right? Diet is the brick and mortar of health, physically, psychologically, and anyway. And really that's true for every being. But of course, today we're going to talk about, cats. So what I want you to do, a couple things before we go through the agenda. If you want to be added to my email list to get notifications of upcoming webinars like this and things like that we're doing, new podcasts that's launching, go ahead and put your email address in the chat so that I'll have that at the end, and I'll be happy to add you. And be prepared to take notes today. You might want to go grab a pad, a paper and pen, or your phone or whatever, so that you can take notes. I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you today, and I'm going to be presenting facts today. Okay. I'm very opinionated when it comes to cat nutrition, but I'm going to try to just stick to the facts today. And if you want to know, what decisions I've made about what to feed my cat, if I can't help but interject it as we go along, then we can talk about that after. You can ask in a question and answer session. And I'm going to mention additives and nutrients throughout the presentation. And at the end, I'm going to have several slides of the resources that shows what those look like and where you can get them. So I'll be showing those at the end. So today, what are we going to cover? We're going to cover what do cats need to eat to thrive? What's the role of hydration? Dry food, we got to talk about dry food. We got to talk about canned foods, and we got to talk about raw food. And then we got to talk about the dry food addict, because you might have one of those. And we're going to then talk about specific nutritional needs for kittens, and then specific nutritional needs for seniors. And then there's a lot of things about how to feed a cat, no matter what you're feeding them, that are important for you to know. We'll cover that. I want to touch a little bit on dental health. I've done several podcasts on dental health only, so I'm not going to make too deep of a dive into that today, but it is related to what you feed. So I want to touch on that. I want to talk about food allergies. You've probably encountered a cat that you've taken to the vet, and the vet has said, oh, he's allergic to chicken or something like that. And so I want to talk about what cats are allergic to and why. I want to talk about treats, because that's all a part of what we feed our cat and counts as nutrition. And then at the end, I'll give you all the resources. So what do cats need to thrive? And I'm asking this generally in all life stages, no matter whether it's a kitten or a senior. What do they need? Well, we all watch those big cat shows, right? And what do they eat, right? Meat. And why? Because they're obligate carnivores, which means they need meat to survive, right? Dogs don't. Dogs are omnivores. They derive nutrition from both plant and animal sources, right? So why can't cats live off plant sources? I'm going to give you 5 reasons why cats aren't adapted to eating a plant-based diet. And there's probably more than 5 reasons, but there are 5 main ones. So 1, their cecum is very small. And the cecum is a little tiny organ that sits outside the stomach. And all obligate carnivores' cecums are small. And the cecum, it's actually responsible for breaking down the cellulose fibers from digesting plant material. So their cecum is little tiny, almost non-existent, really, almost non-functional. So another reason is they don't have salivary amylase. And what that is they don't produce that. And it's an enzyme that's responsible for the initiation of carbohydrate digestion. So that's what begins to digest carbohydrates in your stomach. It's an enzyme that's in stomachs. Well, cats can't produce it. They also have low activity of intestinal and pancreatic enzymes. Now, these are needed to break down carbohydrates in the small intestine. All right, and the liver is designed for the metabolism of proteins instead of carbohydrates. Hold on, I'm going to admit somebody here if I can. Well, maybe not. All right. And no, they don't have enzymes to break down and store sugars for later use. Now, this is really, really important. I want you to think about this. So they don't have the ability to lower blood sugar after a high sugar meal. So, and what that means is that fluctuations in blood sugar after eating a meal of carbs, right, which happens to us too. So with a protein-based diet, glucose is released steadily over a long period of time, right? Rather than a high carb meal, which hits them with a lot of sugars and they're not able to regulate that. So those are 5 just real physical reasons of what's going on inside the body of your cat as to why they can't eat a plant-based diet. Now, personally, I've eaten plant-based diets for many years, and I mostly do now. And, you know, I would love it if I could feed my cat a plant-based diet, because I feel like that's more aligned with my animal welfare way of living, but we're not there yet. The very closest thing might be the company called Because Animals, that's lab growing mouse meat. So no mice were harmed in the making of the food, but it's still not plant-based. We can't do that. So what is their natural prey? Let's look at this. Their natural prey provides high protein, high moisture, a meat-based diet with a moderate level of fat and less than 2% of calories from carbohydrates. Meat provides the essential nutrients and vitamins crucial for your cat's health. Okay?
I know that.
And
Fucking niggas.
what are those nutrients and vitamins that they need, that they're getting in their natural prey? So the first is taurine. That's a big thing they get from their natural prey. And taurine's an amino acid that's critical for cats, and it's only found in meat. It comes from animal sources only. And if cats don't get enough taurine, they can develop a deficiency that can lead to heart issues or eye problems. They can't get too much taurine, by the way. You can't over taurinate a cat, if that's a word. They also need omega-6 fatty acids, and that's found mostly in chicken. All right, and it benefits their skin and coat. Chicken also contains glucosamine, which helps support and build strong bones for the cat. They get omega-3, well, B vitamins. Turkey is full of B6 and B12, which play an important role in the health of their digestive, nervous, and immune systems. They get methionine, which is one of the essential amino acids required by cats. And it's a urinary acidifier that helps to prevent urinary stones. It's found naturally in meat and fish. And DL-methionine is a supplement for cats that aren't eating a meat, but it's no way a substitute for a meat diet. So hydration. You know what wasn't on that list that needed to be on that list was omega-3 fatty acids. And that's really salmon. That comes in salmon, has a lot of that, and it helps boost the immune system. And it also helps to reduce inflammation. So omega-3 fatty acids are great. So hydration, let's talk about hydration. All urinary tract systems in every being are much healthier with an appropriate amount of water flowing through them. All right. Now, cats inherently have a low thirst drive. Why is that? That's because, first of all, they're descendants of a desert cat. So their genetics really didn't have a high thirst drive because they get all of their hydration from their natural prey. We'll talk more about that later too. But so they really aren't just wired to drink a lot. And they need to consume water with their food. So just like they get in the wild with their prey has about 70 to 75% of water in their bodies. And canned food contains about 78% water. All right. Now we're going to talk about dry food. Why do we feed dry food to our cats? Because it's cheap and convenient, right? Grains are cheap. And also somehow we believe that it's removing tartar on their teeth. But that's a myth. Dry food does not clean tartar off your cat's teeth. What happens is, first of all, cats don't chew like we chew. Their jaws don't move side to side. Their jaws only move up and down. So when their teeth, which are very pointed, come in contact with the dry food, it shatters it, and then they pretty much swallow it. The food never really comes in contact with the sides of the teeth where the tartar is. So it's an absolute and total myth that that's a good reason to feed dry food. Dry food also promotes disease in cats, diabetes, kidney disease, and several other things that we'll talk about. So what's wrong with dry food, right? Including, by the way, prescription diets sold by veterinarians, not just isolating dry food that you buy commercially from a pet food store. So what's wrong with it? Well, first of all, the water content is too low. It's only about 5 to 10% water content, and it's physically impossible for cats to make up for that deficit by drinking water. Most people tell me, well, my cat drinks a lot of water. And I'm like, yeah, because it's dehydrated, because they won't be, my cat, like I never see him at the water bowl because he gets, I'm not going to tell you what he gets. We'll save that for later. But cats on canned cat food diets consume twice the amount of water when compared to cats on dry food diets, plus the water they drink from the bowl, right? So if you're feeding your cat canned food, you're getting twice the hydration of the cat that's eating dry food and the water that it consumes. So there's no way that they could possibly drink enough. And predisposing your cat to serious and life-threatening urinary tract diseases, including painful and often fatal urethral obstructions, when you keep your cat mildly dehydrated their whole lives. There's a reason that renal failure is the #1 medical cause of death in cats. It's because our cats are not getting enough hydration. And it may not show up until much later in life because it's mildly dehydrated. So you're not really having issues till the cat's maybe 8 or 9 years old. And then all of a sudden, kidney and renal issues start to flare up and you wonder why. The other thing is that the carb load is too high. Average dry food contains 35 to 50% of carbohydrate calories, and that can predispose your cat to obesity, diabetes, and intestinal disease. Low carb dry food diets are not healthy because they're still water depleted and harshly cooked, resulting in nutrient loss and alteration. Carbs wreak havoc on some cats' blood sugar and insulin balance, and that predisposes them to diabetes. So, you know, even if dry food starts out as meat, as real meat, which relatively few brands do, and they have to cook it to make it hard kibble that's shelf stable as long as it is, they have to cook it at super high temperatures, and it bakes all of the nutrients that your cat needs out of that material. And then they have to go back and spray on synthetic nutrients to make the food AFCO compliant. And those synthetic nutrients are not bioavailable to your cat. So they're not really able to get what they need from a nutrient standpoint from dry food. Another thing that's wrong with dry food is the protein type. it's too high in plant-based versus animal-based proteins. And the protein content statement might be high, like it might say 89% protein in this bag of dry food. But remember that the protein amount doesn't tell that whole story. It's the protein's biological value that's critical. And that biological value refers to the quality and composition of a protein. So it's about how that cat is able to digest that protein and how that protein helps their body. So some other negative issues include bacterial contamination, which can lead to vomiting. If your cat's vomiting or has diarrhea frequently, that could be an issue. Fungal mycotoxins, that's in grains, those can be toxic. Insects and their feces can cause respiratory issues with cats, interestingly enough. And of course, there are a lot of ingredients in dry food that often cause allergic reaction in cats. And we'll talk about that in the allergy section. And again, we talked about the harshly cooked, so it destroys and alters those vital nutrients that your cat needs. So, do many cats survive on a water depleted, high carb, plant-based, harshly cooked, bacteria-laden dry kibble? Yes, they do. But I choose a diet to my cat that's going to promote optimal health, not just survival, right? There's a real significant difference between surviving and thriving. You know, that we are what we eat is not a useless cliche. That is very, very true. So let's talk about canned food, right? Keep in mind that the cheapest canned food is better than any dry food on the market, all right? Think of canned food as flushing your cat's urinary tract several times a day. And canned foods are low in carbs compared with kibble. Some canned foods are high in carbs, and grain-free doesn't always mean low carb. You really need to watch that, because potatoes and peas are often used instead of grains, and they're very high carb ingredients. You want to, in canned cat food, right? You want to watch for and avoid plant protein ingredients on your cat food label. So these are the things that you do not want to see on the ingredient label: corn, wheat, soy, rice, so on and so forth. Those kinds of things. Those are not cat foods. Those are more like grazing foods for different species, not cats. So write those down, and when we're done today, go get your can of cat food and read the ingredient label and see if you have those in there. All right. Now, I want to talk about byproducts, because we can't go without talking about byproducts. If you have tuned into any of my webinars or ever heard me talk about cat food, I always say, don't buy cat food with byproducts in it, right? And those are things, think about byproducts are like the heads, the beaks, the feet, and the stuff that's disposed of, that's not suitable for human consumption. Right. And if we want to feed a diet that's as close to your cat's natural prey, wouldn't that be okay? Right? Because your cat eats the whole carcass when he catches a mouse or a bird. So obviously they're probably not going to eat feathers, and sometimes they don't eat the heads, but otherwise the cat's eating the whole animal. So why are byproducts bad? Right? And I'm going to tell you that they're not all. Right? It's just such a fine line. Well, we'll go through this and then I'll come to my conclusion. But so, and if you're going to get grossed out easy, you might want to go to the bathroom now. Meat byproducts can include clean, nutrient-rich organ meats that your cat needs, like blood and bones and lungs and spleen and liver and kidneys and intestines and things like that. And those are obviously derived from slaughtered animals. And what byproducts are not allowed to contain are hide, hooves, horn, teeth, roadkill, and feces, because your cat cannot digest those things and can't use those things. Now, poultry byproducts must consist of non-rendered clean parts of the carcasses of slaughtered poultry, such as heads, feet, viscera, free from fecal content and foreign matter. Now, a lot of this is from the legal definitions of what they allow for byproducts, is really what I want to cover with you today, so that you know what they are. All right. How did we get to, oh, we're going back to canned food. Okay. So cats require a balanced diet with a correct calcium to phosphorus ratio and essential amino acids. Now, meat alone lacks many of those nutrients, as well as appropriate levels of fats, protein, vitamin A, and calcium. So in other words, you couldn't feed your cat this little bowl of meat over here and expect that to be a nutrient-rich diet, because there's no organ meat in there. Cats need nutrients from the other parts of the animal. A lot of people will feed their cats, you know, salmon and chicken breast and things like that. And while those meats are good for the cat, by themselves, they are not containing all of the nutrients that your cat needs. So what's wrong with byproducts? Because clearly the byproduct list, as we just went over, seems to have those things. So why are they bad? Well, how do you know that the byproduct is a healthy mix of organs and bones and not just 98% chicken feet, right? That's one question to ask. How is that animal fed? And that's very important from an antibiotic content and the makeup of the meat and the organs. How is the animal treated in the facility? Was it a humane facility? Is the meat free of contaminants? How is the meat preserved? And if you can answer those questions, then you'll probably be able to evaluate the quality of meat byproduct that you're feeding your cats. So there's what they call 3D and 4D products, byproducts, right? So you need to ask your cat food manufacturer if it is a USDA inspected facility. So if it is, it will not include 4Ds, which is important, right? 3D stands for dead, diseased, dying, or downed, but the animal is still alive at the time that it was made into cat food or dog food and that type of thing. 4D adds the fourth D is destroyed, which means the animal is dead by the time it gets to the processing plant. And both 3D and 4D animal bodies are salvaged for rendering and are considered unfit for human consumption, but they are acceptable as animal feed, okay? So there's this long quote here for you that animals who have died or been euthanized can be rendered. This is from the USDA. And a quote from the EPA: meat rendering plants process animal byproduct materials for the production of tallow, grease, high protein, meat, and bone meal. Plants that operate in conjunction with animal slaughterhouses or poultry processing plants are called integrated rendering plants. And plants that collect their raw materials from a variety of off-site sources are called independent rendering plants. This is important because independent plants obtain their animal byproducts, including all those things, from butcher shops, supermarkets, restaurants, fast food chains, poultry processors, slaughterhouses, farms, ranches, feedlots, and animal shelters. Okay. I'll just leave that there just so you know, right? Medication exposure. So drugs these animals may have been medicated with are antibiotics, steroids, and sodium pentobarbital that's actually used to euthanize the animals. And those things aren't neutralized in the rendering process. So, how do we evaluate the quality of byproducts? You got to choose a reputable manufacturer. You got to evaluate the level of excitement the cat has when you offer the food, because that'll often tell you a lot. You got to monitor the cat for normal gastrointestinal function, right? Solid stools, no vomiting. Do they have a healthy skin and coat? Is the fur shiny and the skin supple? Do they have a good energy level? Bottom line, buy food where real meat is the main ingredient in the food, and avoid corn, wheat, gluten, soy, and other fillers. All right. Organ meat is good. Real meat includes organ meat. So that's good that be in the list of ingredients. And byproducts are probably okay if they're way down the list of ingredients, because ingredients are listed by the amount of the ingredient. So the amount of the first item is the most, and then the second item is the second most content, and so on and so forth. So if byproducts are way down the list in ingredients and they are including meat and organs, then it's probably okay. I do recommend that you visit truthaboutpetfood.com and catinfo.org. Both of those sites have a lot of information and will help you kind of pick and choose what you need to do. And so, I guess the bottom line is, byproducts are okay. Again, if it's going to be in a canned food and that canned food full of byproducts, even if it's the first thing in the ingredient list, is far better than any dry food on the market, just because of the hydration value, if nothing else. So let's talk about raw food. There are pros and cons to raw food. Let's start with the pros. It is a species appropriate diet, right? Obligate carnivores eat the tissue of other animals to thrive. Cats have an unusually short digestive tract compared to their body size, so they can more easily digest raw food diets. It's also why the salmonella and things like that aren't a problem for the cat, because it moves through the digestive tract so fast, it doesn't have a chance to affect the cat. Raw food diets are less processed ingredients, of course. So it's very minimal processing that preserves that molecular structure of the proteins and the fats and the vitamins and the enzymes. Your cat will have a shiny coat if you feed it a raw food diet, and it's going to have healthier teeth. Carb-rich foods leave a starchy coating on teeth, which leads to plaque buildup and gum disease. Also, cat will be healthier overall. Reduced litter box smell. This is one of the best things. Their stools are smaller and firmer. Now you'd think that's odd because it's a raw food diet and they're actually getting, more moisture in it than potentially a canned food diet. So why wouldn't their feces be more soft and loose? Think about when you go out hiking and you come across bobcat scat. It's very dry and hard and kind of white and tight. That's the way your cat's stool is. My cat's litter box, I can guarantee you, doesn't smell. It's amazing. And weight control, because there's no carbs in a raw diet. And increased energy, right? Because of the high protein that the cat is getting in a raw food diet, it gives them more energy. So what are the cons with raw food? It is more expensive, so significantly, not a little bit, but significantly more expensive. It's not as convenient at all. There are commercial ones sold. This is one, Primal Nuggets. I feed my cat rabbit in this, and they're these little 1 ounce bricks, which are very convenient. I have to keep them frozen, so I can't go make like, run to the cat food store and then do 6 errands after, because they'll be thawed by the time I come home. Here's another one I just pulled out of my freezer. Rar, I feed him this in turkey and chicken, and it's just a solid container of raw food. So it's not as convenient as the Primal bricks, because I got to put it in the refrigerator for a couple days to let it thaw, and then I've got to use all of it. Whereas the bricks, I can put in little Tupperware containers and just sit in the refrigerator to thaw a couple days, sit in there a couple days, and it's not going to waste. So it is definitely not as convenient. We travel a lot, so finding a cooler that will keep the cat food frozen while we're 10 or 11 hours on the road is difficult. It has a much shorter shelf life than anything, because it's not processed. It's raw food. And it may be a source of bacteria. Now, again, not for your cats. We're not as worried about this for your cat, but for susceptible animals and household members. Now, you wouldn't want to feed raw food to an unhealthy cat. Okay, you need to feed raw food to a healthy cat that's equipped to deal with the bacteria in raw meats. But if you have other pets with compromised immune systems, they're not good candidates for raw food. And if you have a compromised immune system, then you're probably not a good household candidate for feeding raw food. Think of it like handling raw chicken, right? So when we feed in the sink, we always, of course, wash. We have a separate scrub brush that's just for the cat food bowls, that doesn't get used on human dishes. I have a specific spoon that's just for the cat food mixing, never gets used with our silverware. And then we spray the sink down with bleach after I'm done every time, rinse it out and spray it down. So you have to be conscious that you're handling raw meat, and you need to treat it as such. You need to treat it as if you were handling raw chicken in your sink. So let's talk about homemade raw food, because a lot of people want to make their own. They don't want to buy it commercially. I know when I started feeding raw food 25, 30 years ago, it wasn't commercially made. I had to buy it, and I had to buy the ground rabbit and then make it myself. And it's difficult because complete nutrition is really key for your cat. It's really hard to get enough organ meat in the food. Like we were talking earlier, it isn't enough just to prepare your cat chicken breast and fresh salmon, because they need that organ meat. And then when you add the nutrients to it, it's really challenging to evenly distribute it in the food, right? And like when I used to make it, I would buy these 5-pound logs of fresh ground rabbit, and I would mix in egg yolks and psyllium husk and taurine and B12 and all kinds of things. And then I'd have rubber gloves on. I had a giant stainless steel bowl that's just for mixing raw food, and you'd mix it all in. Well, without a commercial mixer, I'm not really evenly distributing all those nutrients throughout the whole 5 pounds of food. So the cat's not getting everything they need in every meal. So it's just a little more difficult. With it as easily accessible as it is commercially, then, that's easier. Is it cheaper to make the food yourself? Absolutely. It is the more inexpensive way to serve raw food. And it's hard to source quality organ ingredients and bone and etc. And of course, you have greater exposure to bacteria in the handling. It's one thing if I scoop out raw food with a spoon in this container or scoop out a brick with that versus mixing that in a big bowl and having it over all those dishes. So there is a list, and this is on the truthaboutpetfood.com. I wanted to share this with you. If you're going to make raw food at home, I suggest that you look at this list, go to this website and look at this list. This list shows you, is it human grade food ingredients, human grade supplements, human food manufacturing, humanely raised, and the type. So over here it's cooked, raw, cooked, dry, freeze dried, raw. So the one that I like best is called Hair Today. And it's this is where I used to buy my rabbit from 30 years ago, and they're still in business and they're considered one of the best sources. They humanely raise rabbits primarily, but they have all kinds. And they've got here the dollars per day. So a 10-pound cat, you know, anywhere from $1.69 to $4.24 a day. And that includes all of the nutrients that you need. So and it's HARE-today.com. It's up here in this corner. And this is an excellent facility if you want to make homemade raw food yourself. Now you will need to add what's called All-Nutrin, which is mentioned right here. They sell that on their site, and it's a powdered nutrient additive. And that keeps you from having to do the egg yolks and psyllium husk and all of that stuff. So you don't have to put all those individual additives in there. The All-Nutrin is everything, all nutrition, and it's really great stuff. It's good stuff even if you're not feeding raw, by the way. So let's talk about the dry food addict, because I hear all the time, well, I've had a cat for, 12 years and eats dry food and he's doing just fine. My cat does just fine on dry food, right? Well, he's fine until he's not. He's fine until those outward signs of disease process are exhibited. Think about it like, what if your 4-year-old kid refused to eat vegetables and all he wanted to eat were potato chips all day long? Would you let them? No, you probably wouldn't, because you know how important it is for your child to have a complete nutritionally balanced diet. It's the same thing with your cat, and your cat is not getting a nutritionally balanced diet through dry food. So, every cancer patient was also fine until their tumor grew enough to spread far enough that the clinical signs were observed, right? Every cat with an inflamed bladder was fine until they ended up in pain and not using the litter box. Diseases brew in the system long before they become noticed by us. So switching your cat to better food is preventative nutrition. And that's really important. So how do we transition a dry food addict to a better meal? All right, my cat won't eat wet food. I hear that all the time. And they will, it just takes work on your part. All right. So first of all, know that cats don't like change. So in anything, you notice how your cat gets kind of upset when things change. Well, you go and change the food, the cat's going to boycott it just because it's a change, not because he doesn't like the food. They go like, what's up? That's different. I don't trust that. So understand that that's a lot of what's going on mentally with the cat behind it. Cats also have very specific texture preferences. Some cats will only eat pate, some will only eat shreds, some chunks. They like the gravy, they don't like the gravy. Every cat is a real picky texture eater. So when you go to the store, you've got to buy lots of different textures to try and bring them all home and then try them in little bits. So I suggest getting 2 or 3 cans of 4 or 5 different kinds, because that way, when you hit upon one, then you can take the other unopened cans back to the store and they'll exchange them for that one that the cat decided it liked. You just want to pull up the dry food. If you're switching brands of cat food, one canned cat food to another, that's different. You want to slowly mix in the new canned cat food or the raw food. You definitely don't hard turkey, switch to raw food. That can very much upset their stomach. So if you're feeding canned food now, I would not recommend switching a dry food only cat to a raw food diet. I'd recommend switching from dry food to canned food and then canned to raw. Make it a gradual process. So if you're switching from dry to canned, you just pull up the dry food and give them a bunch of things to sample at different meal times, and offer it in small portions, right? So that they can, and then of course, exchange the other ones. Stand your ground. It's really important. You'll get a cat that's, they're addicted to potato chips. So, they're going to be throwing a fit like, I'm not going to eat. And you know what? They'll eat. I promise they will eat. And there is a use for dry food we're going to get to later. So you can donate it to a shelter or a rescue, but you can also hold on to it, because I'm going to show you where you should use it and where you can use it. But if you're switching from one canned to a better brand of canned food, different can, then just slowly add a little bit of the new food in, little tiny amount each meal, a little tiny more, a little tiny more, a little tiny more, and then they'll eventually be eating it. And you do the raw the same way. If you're switching from canned to raw, you just put a little tiny bit of raw food in with the can, a little tiny bit more, a little more each feeding, and you make that a very slow transition. So let's talk about the kittens. What do kittens need differently in nutrition than everything we've talked about today? So first of all, they need about 2 to 3 times the energy of an adult cat, because they're using a lot of that energy to grow, obviously, right? They need 30% of their total energy from protein, and they need energy from fat. All right, they should have about 8 to 11% fat. So they need a very high fat, high protein diet. They have a higher requirement for protein, protein for muscle and bone development, and fatty acids for metabolism, health, skin, coat, amino acids like taurine, right? There's taurine additives. So I'll show you at the end slide where to get that. And that supports their cardiovascular health, eyesight development. They also need magnesium, copper, iodine, vitamin A, vitamin D, and all of that supports brain development, vision, and strong teeth in kittens. So should I feed kitten dry food? No, from a nutritional standpoint, because there's not enough protein, right? But if you are fostering a kitten, and this isn't your kitten you're going to keep forever, you do need to feed some dry food, because a variety is the best. You never know what that kitten's going to be fed when it gets adopted into a home, and you don't want it to be super, super picky, like I'll only eat canned or I'll only eat dry. You want to make sure that it has a variety of experiences and things to eat while it's in your home, right? That's the most prudent thing. If it's your kitten you're going to keep forever, no, don't feed it dry food. It needs more protein than that. So is canned food better than raw food? Canned food is better than dry food, right? If it's a kitten you're keeping again, and you're going to feed it raw food forever, then, raw is better. If it's a foster, like the foster kitten I have now, I'm not feeding raw food. because it's never going to get raw food in the home it goes into, right? So, but Pico, when I got Pico as a kitten and I kept him, you bet, I started him out on a raw food diet immediately. And he is on it today and will be for the rest of his life. So there was your answer to, can I feed my kitten raw food diet? You want to add taurine if you do, by the way. These commercially available raw food diets, and there's many more than just these two, but you'll want to add taurine to it. You'll want to add omega-3 supplements, which is like anything like this, right? Wild Alaskan salmon oil. They're not very expensive. You can get it on Chewy's and Amazon and all of those types of places. You do want to add taurine. Chicken and turkey are probably okay by themselves because they're pretty high in taurine. Beef, venison, lamb, rabbit are low in taurine, and you'll want to be sure to add that to every meal. You cannot add too much taurine to your cat's meal. So, and they sell it on Amazon in a little powder, and it doesn't have any real flavor to it. So you can just sprinkle it on the cat food and they'll eat it just fine. So let's talk about the senior cats. What do they need different? Let's first define seniors. A cat 7 to 11 years of age is considered a senior. They have a higher risk of obesity because they're not as active and their metabolism slows. Kind of like me, I'm a senior and I've hit that horrible reality. And 11 plus is considered a geriatric cat. And that's when they start to lose body mass. So you'll start to see cats get kind of thin and bony, like this little guy I have pictured over here. You know, they'll start to lose that body mass as they get 11 and older. So senior cats need higher protein, again, than regular, younger cats, because they need to help maintain that lean body mass. They need a really high quality protein because it's harder for their kidneys to process protein, right? And if you've had cats with kidney issues, you've heard your veterinarian tell you that. So you want to make sure that the protein your senior cat is getting is clean and of high quality. You want to look for foods that contain muscle meat or organ meat at the top of the ingredient list. That's how you know that it's higher quality. You want to look for really calorie dense foods. You want to look for foods that contain 30 to 40% of digestible protein on a dry matter basis. And that's as long as your cat doesn't have any chronic diseases. Okay. If your cat has chronic diseases, then that can be very different in terms of protein levels. And you want to make sure you get a cat food that smells really good and tastes good for the cat, because they also tend to get some dental issues at this age and sometimes get really picky about what they eat. Now, inferior forms of protein. All right, so this is how you know it's quality protein. In quality protein are meat meal, corn, and meat byproducts. You want to add vitamin E and vitamin C to a senior cat's diet. That's going to help promote their kidney function. You want to add the omega-3 fatty acids because they struggle to absorb fat as they get older. And you want to do probiotics or prebiotics to support digestion. You want to make sure that the food has low levels of sodium and phosphorus. Phosphorus is what the kidneys have a really hard time producing as the cat gets, or digesting as the cat gets older. So a lot of times vets will put your cat on a low phosphorus diet if they have kidney issues. And that's why, because that's hard. So, and cats with kidney disease should absolutely consume less protein. So you can see how it's very hard to support a senior cat nutritionally because it needs more protein, but the kidneys are not really able to produce the, to digest the protein. So how do you feed a quality diet to a cat that's got kidney disease? It's very, very, very challenging. And this is why you want to feed them good quality food their whole life so that they don't have kidney diseases when they become seniors and you're not faced with this impossible task. So let's talk about feeding cats. No matter what you feed, this is what I recommend. First of all, frequency. So in the wild, cats are going to eat 10 to 20 small meals a day. Now, when I first heard that, I was like, what? How can that be? I fed my cat 2 or 3 times a day and that was it. And feeding them 2 to 3 times a day is like us eating every other day. And a hangry cat is a recipe for behavior issues. So it's a lot of why you have conflict between cats. It's a lot of the reason why you have middle of the night crazies is because we're probably not feeding frequently enough. I recommend feeding 4 to 5 times a day. If you're fostering kittens, more like 6 or 7 times a day. You want to make sure that you feed on a schedule, right? On a routine. Pick times that you're going to feed your cat. I recommend that you feed your cat 20 to 30 minutes after you get up, not right when you get up. If you feed a cat right when you get up, it's going to associate you getting up with it getting fed, and then it's going to bug you to get up. So get up, make coffee, brush your teeth, do some things, then feed the cat. Then feed again about 12:30, 1:30 in the afternoon. Feed again at supper time when you eat your meal, 6:30. Feed again right before you go to bed. And then okay, gosh, how long was I muted? If I was muted a while.
Only a second. Don't worry.
Okay,
Only a couple seconds.
good.
Yeah.
Good. So I use this food timer if I'm not going to be home, right? I work from home, so I'm usually here, can feed all those meals. But when I'm not, then I prepare his breakfast and then I prepare his lunch. It pops open at the right time. It has a wonderful cold pack that you put in the freezer. So I put that in there and then I put his food in there and then I set the timer for usually 4 to 5 hours and go about my day. When I am having a cat sitter, it's easy for them because they come twice a day and they'll do the breakfast, prepare the lunch and the food timer, do the dinner, prepare the right before bedtime and the food timer so that he gets at least 4 meals a day. Now, I use the food timer also for a 3 a.m. feeding, and I'll put in a freeze-dried, I use this Vital Cat from Vital Essentials. This particular one is pork and they're little patties. And I put the freeze-dried raw food, about a half a patty in the timer in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. That's a good use for your dry food, right? Feed 4 wet meals during the day and then put a 1/4 of a cup or 1/8 of a cup of dry food in the timer for 3 a.m. And that'll make a very peaceful kitty. You want to be sure to feed out of a whisker friendly bowl. Now, why? Well, because cats do have, we sell these on our website, by the way, and they're super cheap. They're made from bamboo. So it's very eco-friendly and they're like $5 and they come in a variety of colors. But cats have sensitive nerve endings at the ends of their whiskers. and so sensitive that a cat uses its whiskers like additional fingers when it's hunting prey. And it can actually feel the changes in the wind, which will detect which direction the prey is going to run. So they use those whiskers. They're super sensitive. So if you're feeding in a bowl that a cat has to stick its nose into and the whiskers touch the side of the bowl, that can get really annoying after a while to them. So it may be why your cat's just eating a little bit and walking away and then coming back later and eating a little bit. So you should feed on a flat surface so that the whiskers don't touch anything. Same thing with the water bowl. It should also be flat so the whiskers don't touch it. I like these bowls because they have a little lip. So, you know, the food doesn't fall out, but yet it's nice and flat. Add hot water to the food that you feed, not dry food. If you're feeding dry food, ignore this part, but add hot water to your canned food or your raw food. Not only does it warm it up, but it helps with additional hydration. Again, I don't think you can overhydrate your cat any more than you can over taurine your cat. It's real important too, if you're feeding canned food, don't store the leftovers. So if you feed a half a can of canned food, don't store the leftovers in the can, because as soon as the air touches the food, it emits air touches the metal inside the can, it will emit a bitter flavor to the food. And a lot of times cats won't eat the leftovers, the second or third portions out of a can. So scoop it out into a Tupperware or glass container and you put it in the refrigerator. Now, when you get it out of the refrigerator, float it in hot water. Don't put it in the microwave. The microwave will cook it and molecularly change the food. Just float it in hot water like you were warming up a baby bottle, right? And then add hot water to the food. Touch the cat as you put the food bowl down. This is an excellent bonding opportunity, right? This associates you as the feeder and the provider, and the cat really begins to bond better with you. In fact, Pico won't eat unless I stand there a minute and let him rub against my leg and I pet down his side, then he'll start eating. It's kind of become a little ritual for us. Make sure you're not rewarding bad behavior with a meal or treats. So often this is easy to do. Cat will come up and, you know, bite you on the leg or whatever it does to get your attention, and you go, oh, you must be hungry, and you get up and feed it. Don't do that, because any behavior that we reward, we see more of, and any behavior we ignore will eventually become extinct. So don't reward bad behavior with a meal. All right, let's talk briefly about dental health. So canned food also, by the way, does not provide any abrasive force against the teeth. All right, so when I told you dry food was a myth, that dry food cleaned teeth, I wasn't insinuating that canned food did clean the teeth, because it doesn't either, right? You need to have dental treats. There's a site that you should go to called the veterinary, what is it called? The Veterinary Oral Health Council. So it's vohc.org. And prescription diets as treats. So this, they're big, and actually Pico won't eat it, but this is Hill's Dental Care TD chicken. And they're very large nuggets, and I thought I was going to be able to use them like with treat toss and that he would go eat them up. He doesn't. He does eat greenies, so that works, but maybe your cat will eat these. There is a water additive called cat water, and it's actually like clinically proven to reduce urinary tract infections and things like that, and reduce plaque on teeth. There are topical gels, all kinds of things. And this Veterinary Oral Health Council has put together a list for you with links that shows you which ones really do work. And so check that out. There's a bunch of good stuff there. You can give chunks of meat for your cat to gnaw on. That will help remove tartar and plaque. Brushing daily is the best way to keep a cat's mouth healthy. And you know, I was really going to do that when Pico was a kitten, and I was going to get him desensitized to the toothbrush, the little finger toothbrushes and all of that. And I didn't. I just failed to do it. I didn't make time to do that. And I hate that now, because now I'm having to do it and it's not easy. So there is a toothpaste that's called Verbac, and it's an enzymatic toothpaste. The two flavors I think cats might like best are poultry and malt flavors. Maybe. So the best thing you want to do is to, you know, put it on your finger and get the cat to start licking it off your finger, and then touch the canines, because it's easiest to touch the canines in the front. A lot of times cats will rub their teeth on you to scent you, so they'll let you touch their canines, and then try to touch the other teeth. And it's best to do it before meals to try to get that toothpaste on there. With that toothpaste, because it's enzymatic, you don't really have to brush, because you're not really abrasively removing the tartar and the plaque. The enzymes are actually going to eat that tartar and plaque bacteria. So that's good. And then the other thing I'd say is Base Paws does an oral test for cats for $99, and they give you dental markers. I did a Base Paws DNA test on Pico, a baseline, when he was a young kitten, and then I did it again when he was 2 years old. Well, the first time he had, you know, zero risk for dental disease or tooth resorption or anything like that. I did it again at 2 years, and it came back high risk for dental disease, hence taking him to the vet and saying he needs a dental cleaning, clearly, because you swab, you just take like a little swab, and then it has a little kit and you mail it back, and it's a good investment. In fact, they include the dental marker report with the whole DNA kit, which I think is about 150 or something like that, but you can do the oral test by itself. Let's talk about food allergies. So cats can have allergies to food or the environment. Now, think about this. Over 80% of pet allergies are misdiagnosed, right? Because we're guessing in a lot of the cases. Food allergies affect just a teeny tiny percentage of cats. Dogs have a much higher chance of food allergies compared to cats. So if your cat has a food allergy, it's usually a skin issue. All right. It's usually itching a lot, inflamed red skin, ears. It's a lot up here, collar, head, ears, could be rectum, and it goes on year round. That's how you know it's not an environmental allergy. It happens every month and every season. Ear infections, vomiting, diarrhea, those are all signs of food allergies. And your cat can develop a food allergy at any time, right? So they have to have been exposed to a food ingredient before they develop an allergy to it. They can't develop an allergy to a food that they've never been exposed to before. It's not going to be allergic the first time they eat something. It's something that's developed from repeated exposure to the same proteins. So don't think I can't have a food allergy going on because I've been feeding chicken for years and this just now started. It could be that, but they're probably not allergic to the grains in the food, right? They're more likely allergic to protein or a carbohydrate ingredient, right? Like chicken, beef, seafood, corn, gluten meal, wheat, eggs, lactose, that sort of thing. They can develop at any time after about 3 months of age. And there are no reliable blood or skin tests that are going to determine whether your cat has a food allergy. The only way to pinpoint the allergen is through food trials. And it takes about 6 to 8 weeks to do a food trial if you do it right. And you have to feed the cat a protein that it's not been exposed to before, see what the changes are, and then reintroduce the old food and see if the symptoms reappear. Food allergies cannot be cured, right? You have to manage it with limited food ingredients. Your vet will tell you a hydrolyzed diets, prescription food that's purchased through your vet. And they're proteins that are broken apart so that the cat's immune system doesn't recognize them as triggers for the allergies. So that's what you have to do if you unfortunately get a cat that develops food allergies. Thankfully, I've never personally had to deal with that. So treats. Should you treat your cat? Absolutely. Treats, giving your cat treats is a great bonding opportunity. It's excellent training opportunity, foraging, and mental stimulation. And by that, I mean, you put treats in food puzzles. Let's start with this. I always tell people, start with an easy food puzzle. This is a ball that has a little door, and you put the hard treats in there, and you can control how big the holes are open. And then when the cat bats this around, the treats fall out. So they learn that they have to nudge it or bat it around. This is a very good starting point for mental stimulating food puzzles. We sell that on our site, by the way, and we sell this one as well. And this one's called a fish bowl, so it doesn't tip over. The cat has to learn to scoop the treats out of the bowl in order to get it. So this is a good step 2 for teaching them food puzzles. And then Chewy carries a lot of these wonderful food puzzles. You put the treats in there, and then they have to learn that they have to slide these, and there's little drawers that pull out, and then there's one like this, which has all kinds of things, like they sometimes have to move 2 things to get to the treat. You can put a treat actually in the ladybug and a treat in the hole, so they learn that they have to move the flap to get the treat, and then they have to slide this over and back for the treat to drop in the hole. So these get more complicated, and problem solving is something your cat needs. So use your dry food, right? This is where you're going to use your dry food to create foraging opportunities. So calories, do you need to consider the calories in the treats? Yeah, you got to consider them. I really, really, really like these lick and lap treats. If you've ever worked with me, you've seen I always carry a pocket full of them when you go to the shelter. I like them because, you know, they're easy to dispense. If you're training a cat, it's very easy to reward in little pieces. And the fosters all know them, and the cats in the shelter, they see the pink packet coming and they go crazy. And there's very little calories. It's high quality. Turkey is another great thing, just shaved deli turkey. Baby food, as long as it's chicken, not the gravy, but just chicken in the baby food. Vitacraft makes a lot of other great products. Another good one is the Wildly Natural, and they're tiny, which is why sometimes I'll use those for treat toss for across the room. So again, treat toss. When I toss the treats, I'll make sure he realizes we're playing treat toss, and then I'll toss it like under a curtain or under the counter, somewhere he's got to kind of go and forage for it. Great exercise, super mental stimulation and problem solving. You absolutely should include treats on a daily basis in your cat's diet. Now, resources. We'll go through these quickly, and then we'll get to question and answer. So this is the taurine that I use and recommend you use. It's called Life Extension Cat Mix, and it is available on Amazon in that pretty blue jar. Phosphate binder. So if you have an older cat and you still want to feed a high quality protein diet, this Kitten actually binds the phosphate. So if you have an older cat, for kidney support, I recommend you use this phosphate binder. Probiotics, I like Fortiflora because animals also has a nice probiotic as well. But the cats seem to like the Fortiflora. They love the way it tastes. I think it has a lot of brewer's yeast in there. So that's typically my go-to probiotic. This is the All-Nutrin that I was telling you about. Another good site there, knowwhatyoufeed.com. You can get the All-Nutrin on the hairtoday.com website. And that's an excellent supplement to add to canned food and certainly raw food. This is the toothpaste that I mentioned, the Verbac enzymatic toothpaste. This particular one is poultry flavor, but they have a malt flavor. If you can find the malt, I suggest getting that for your cat because I think they like the malt flavors a little better than the poultry flavors. Cat water, this is the water that I mentioned. It's urinary formula. I put it in the food because my cat doesn't drink water from a bowl. I mean, I do keep it out and I keep it fresh, but he doesn't really drink from it. So I use this water. I warm it up in the microwave and or in a kettle on the stove, and then I use it in the food. All right, and then knowwhatyoufeed.com has great homemade raw information. Catinfo.org, great information from a vet about cat nutrition and raw diets. Truthaboutpetfood.com, they're like the consumer reports of pet food. Hair-today.com, they're the one I was saying was a great source for raw meats. And basepaws.com, that's where you can get the DNA or the oral health test. And the Veterinary Oral Health Council, the VOHC.org. And then, of course, on our website, catbehaviorsolutions.org/shop takes you to our store. You can buy the Lick and Lap treats there, the whisker-friendly bowls, the puzzles, the food puzzles, all of that stuff we have there. Now I'm going to stop screen sharing so we can start with questions. So jump in, unmute yourselves, and shoot away. I know we're running late. I knew we would. What do we have in chat? Oh yeah, someone was talking about those mason jars. That's exactly what I do, Doug. Yeah, I use those little small glass mason jars and I put my leftovers in that. Yeah, absolutely. What else, everybody, about adding Dinovite? I'm not familiar with Dinovite. Sarah, what's in that? She's still with us? I'll have to look that up. I'm not familiar with what Dinovite is. And then someone asked, don't.
She said she had to leave.
Oh, okay. And then says, don't store in a can, even covered. Yes, absolutely, especially covered. Again, once the air touches the can, then it actually emits a bitter flavor, and so the cat won't eat a lot of the leftovers. My Foster is up on the table, which is very funny. It's the first time he's been up on the table. So yeah, don't store it in a can ever. Go ahead and put that in your mason jar or your Tupperware dish. And then I use hot water to just rinse out the gravy and stuff that's left in the bottom of the can and then put it right on the food. So let's see, what else over here? Savage cat food. Okay, cool, good. About cat fountains. That's a very good question about cat fountains. So again, if you're feeding your cat properly, it's not going to drink a lot of water. Cats do tend to, well, they don't tend to, cats like fresh water, clean, fresh water, and clean, fresh bowls, which means you really need to scrub that bowl out every day and replace that water every day. And then replace the bowl. Like I throw my bowl in the dishwasher. I have a set of bowls I use for the water that are wide mouth. And then I scrub them out every day, fresh water, and then I'll put them in the dishwasher about the third day. Because when you pick up a bowl and you feel the bottom of it and it's slimy, what that is that's bacteria from the cat's mouth. So then the cat drinks water, bacteria goes into the water, and then is slime on the bottom of the bowl. Well, they don't like the way that smells or tastes. So if you feel slime on the bottom of your bowl, then it's not fresh enough. Well, the problem with cat fountains is you got a little motor in there, and you've got a wire coming out, and you've got all these parts that are really, really hard to clean that bacteria from. I've tried stainless steel ones, ceramic ones, every kind of cat fountain, and I just got tired of messing with the maintenance. So I just use a bowl and make sure that I'm keeping it very, very clean every day. What else? So what else over here?
Do I hear Pico in the background?
That's actually my foster. That's Curry, my little foster cat. And he was a feral kitten, and I've only had him about a week now. He made good progress in the shelter behavior modification program. I wish Sarah was still on, but he darts around a lot, so he isn't getting close enough for me to pick him up just yet. If he does, I'll pick him up and show him to you. He looks just like Pico. He's a Pico twin for sure. Anybody else? More questions?
Yeah, Molly,
Yeah.
Karen here.
Hi,
Hey,
Karen.
I sent you a direct message. I've been telling my adopters no canned seafood. Am I wrong? I mean, I think it probably has lots of mercury in it, and I even protested getting canned salmon from DAS.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Yes. And that is something I didn't include in this. That is absolutely true, that I usually tell people is stay away from fish. It's not a natural food source for cats. All right. They really didn't start eating fish until the Nordics came and took them from Egypt, and then they got fish on ships. But the salmon oil is very good for them. So you should make sure they're getting omega-3s and the fatty acids, but feeding them fish is very problematic. It is high in stay away from canned fish or all fish. I'd say stay away from all fish if you can. I don't feed my cat fish. All right. Let's put it that way. I don't feed my cat fish ever, any kind of fish. I feed him rabbit, turkey, and chicken.
Well, I also have an adopter, and this really has upset me, who got 2 of my kittens, and she feeds dry food and canned tuna, which just seems like a terrible diet.
It is. It absolutely is. And sadly, we're not ever going to be able to control what happens in our fosters' lives once they leave our care. And yeah, it's frustrating and sad. Sometimes it's better not to know, Karen.
I know. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I go around the community and we'll do nail trims for cats. And one of my cats, my favorite cats, is this older cat. He's 10, and he's got to be this big around because all he eats is a dry food diet. And I mentioned her, he has an elderly owner, and I mentioned to her that I was doing this seminar, and she goes, well, I don't know that I could join. I don't think I could figure out how. And she said, and he gets what he gets, is he eats what he eats and gets what he gets. And I said, yeah, and you probably don't want to feel guilty about it. So maybe it's better you don't attend, because I guess all she feeds him is dry food, and that's all she's willing to feed him. And he's obese. He's morbidly obese, and he's got a lot of teeth missing. And yeah, it's sad. It hurts my heart when I see cats like that. How do I address the issue of food and nutrition with clients during consults? Good question. I don't think I go on a consult where I don't talk about nutrition, because nutrition is absolutely just foundational to a cat's behavior. Probably ours too, really, if you get right down to it. But, you know, if they're not in some way, shape or another, especially if it's litter box issues, it's almost always can be tied back to a dry food diet and things like that. So I always tell people in the course of counseling them that, you know, the healthiest thing you can do for your cat is to get it on a moist, hydrated diet, you know. And, you know, depending on the client and their resources, I don't often push raw food on a lot of people. It's not for everybody, you know. And it's definitely there's my Foster. Aha. Exploring the fireplace back there. That's Curry. He's going to come out black here in a minute. Yeah, I do discuss it in absolutely every consult, but I don't push it on them. I always try to feel out, you know, what a client's really capable of managing, and I help them to learn how to manage it. You know, when you tell somebody that they need to feed their cat 4 to 5 times a day, their eyes get really big, and you can tell those wheels are turning and they're going, how in the heck am I going to do that? And, you know, so I carry my food timer with me on consults, and I show them it's very easy. This is how you do it. And try to help them understand how manageable that is. I didn't mention this, but there are some pretty affordable, good canned cat foods out there. Wholehearted, Petco's house brand Wholehearted is pretty good, because expense is a big thing. A lot of reasons why clients feed their cats dry food is because it's cheap, and you know, that's cheap and it's convenient. You just make sure the bowl is full. So I try to push them towards brands that are good. Wholehearted is good. Abound, Kroger, Smith's, that whole chain, that's the same, but the Kroger chain makes a house brand called Abound, and that's good also. So and someone asked, do you recommend primal freeze dried adding water? You know, I've done that. I actually add bone broth sometimes. I'll warm up some bone broth, low sodium bone broth, and add that to either my fresh raw or that. But yes, you need to add water to the freeze dried, because even though you're feeding raw, which is a higher protein content, they're still not getting the moisture and the hydration they need if all you're feeding is freeze-dried raw. That's why I only feed the freeze-dried raw at night in the timer, just one little half patty at 3 a.m. And then he gets the fresh, juicy stuff all day long.
Can I ask that question? Can I ask, do you add taurine to it? To the prime?
You can, but you don't really need to, because they've done that for you. If you'll notice in their list of ingredients, so like here I've got rabbit with ground bone, which is great, rabbit livers, organic kale, celery, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, cranberries, blueberries, rabbit kidneys, which is great, rabbit lungs, rabbit hearts, and a lot of times, and they add fish oil in here, and taurine. You'll see taurine on the list. Coconut oil, cod liver oil, vitamin E supplement. So they, and more kelp, the dried organic kelp, which is great for the omega-3 fatty acids. So they add a lot of that in there for you. So I typically don't add it to raw food. If you're feeding canned food, I do add it to canned food for sure. So multi-cat household where there are 2 grazers and one would come behind and eat it all if I'm not quick enough. Yeah. So I'm assuming they're grazing on canned food. Again, if you're feeding smaller portions, the reason why cats graze is because their stomachs are very small in relation to the other organs in their body. Their stomachs are about the size of a ping pong ball. So they really can't eat a lot. Like if you're feeding a whole can of cat food, they can't, that's a whole day's portion. They really need about a quarter of a big 5.5 ounce can, about a half of a little can this size per portion is all they would eat. So reduce the portions so that the cats are finishing it and feed more frequently. That's one way to manage that.
Can I
Another-
interrupt a second? This is my question. And I
Yeah,
do feed 4 times a day.
good.
And I only feed 2 of my cats will only eat maybe a quarter of a 3-ounce can in a sitting. I can't get them to eat any more than that. And they are kibble junkies. And I have tried all the things that you said, but they will only eat a few bites in a sitting. And I do use the bowls that you described, like the whisker friendly, at least for the one who's worse about it. So this is why I'm at a loss, because I feel like I've tried everything you've
There are,
suggested.
so there are pet food feeders that the cats have a microchip on their collar so that feeder will only open for that cat.
Yeah, I don't like collars on them because I worry about them getting stuck under the bed or something with the collar
Well, there's
on.
some that'll work with the microchip that's in the cat. You don't have to put a collar on them at all,
Oh, okay.
right? You program the frequency to your cat's microchip, and if you don't have
Oh,
your cat's microchipped, you should get them microchipped. If
oh,
you're,
they are. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. I'll have to look into that.
yeah, that would be the best way. I would also encourage you to work harder at your kibble addicts, because I have never met a kibble addict that could not be switched with enough diligence. So it's just a matter of buying enough different foods and
Oh, I have. I work in a pet store and I've worked in 3 consecutive pet stores because we keep getting bought out. I've tried dozens.
yeah, I would encourage you to keep trying. I almost had him.
Hey, Molly, I wanted to share something.
Here he is.
There he is. Pico.
No,
Oh, hello.
Curry. This is Curry the foster.
Oh, that's Curry.
This is Curry.
I wanted to add something. If you do have a feral kitten, and I just finished with 2 feral kittens that were extremely difficult. The breakthrough was feeding them canned food for my fingers.
Yes.
That was what broke through it.
Yeah. This is what we use the lick and lap for. So
They didn't want lick and lap.
well, that's weird. But yeah, canned food works the same way. Anything they'll eat from the fingers. Oh yeah, he's like, you got the lick and lap packet. they anything they like, you pair with you, right? That's the secret to it. Now, an interesting thing. So he has just been free running in the house the last day or so. And I've been feeding him canned food. Because he's been in the shelter 3 months, this poor little guy has lived in the shelter. He came in the shelter at like 8 weeks and has been in the shelter 3 months. Why nobody adopted this gorgeous boy, except you couldn't get your hands on him. He wouldn't hold still. So anyway, I've been feeding him canned food just because he's had enough dry, and I'm not going to have him too long. And I feed Pico. I feed him at the same time I feed Pico, but Pico gets raw food in a different room. And Pico didn't finish his raw food. And I thought, this will be interesting, because a lot of cats, if they've never had raw food, won't just go eat it. It's too different. Well, he ran over there and he cleans up Pico's raw food. He actually prefers it. He's like, I want the raw food, but he's going to keep getting canned.
Is that a low carb food for cats who are on a specific diet plan?
Is raw food low carb?
Yeah.
Most, yeah, raw food is definitely low carb. And canned foods, as long as you avoid the corn and the wheat and the gluten and the potatoes and peas and things like that, they'll be low carb also. Yeah. Okay, what do we got?
May I ask a question, Molly?
Sure.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Oh, hi, I'm Karina. My accent, I'm Portuguese.
Hi, Karina.
Hi, I have a question. So I hear often that, oh, my cat does not like wet food. And every time he smells wet food, he do that kind of he going to puke. And I kind of don't know how to explain that to them. I always explain the importance of the wet food, but I don't have a way to turn that cat eating to wet food. I don't know what to advise when I have that kind of question.
Yeah, it's, sometimes you have to carry wet food with you to consults. And I'll do that a lot of times and just go ahead and, and open them up and show them when you have a good quality canned food. So a lot of times I'll take those different textures with me and show them how that works. You can also switch them to a freeze-dried raw first, because if it's the actual wet that they're not liking, then switch them to a freeze-dried raw, and then slowly add a little bit of bone broth to it. That's how I've been successful at getting a lot of those dry food addicts over. So you're just adding a little tiny bit of the bone broth to the freeze-dried raw each time, like a little dropper full, and then a 2, and then 3, and just each meal slowly increase it. And because again, what cats don't like is change. That's really what they don't like. It's not a matter of them not liking the canned food. They don't like the fact that you're changing what they eat. That freaks them out. So if you change slowly, start mixing a little bit of the freeze-dried raw, because you don't want to put wet in dry food, by the way. That's not an answer. It'll grow bacteria. It's nasty. But start adding the freeze-dried raw into their dry food, little bits at a time, until you get them fully transitioned, and then start adding a little bit of moisture then to the freeze-dried raw. Okay, someone says I missed the first part. But all right, I'm trying to wean my 2 formula from dry food. Yeah, well, we've been talking about that a lot. So it sounds like feed them more. So she says, I've been trying to wean my 2 4-month-old kittens from dry food and have been giving them a tablespoon of canned food 3 to 4 times a day. But they seem continually hungry without the dry food, begging for treats or more food. I would say feed them more canned food and less dry food. You're at that point where you're ready to wean them from the dry food completely. So just feed them more. They don't, assuming you're going to keep them, they don't need dry food for any reason.
Is dog wet food like from Blue Wilderness or Blue Buffalo? Is that good for them?
Dog food?
Duck.
Oh, duck.
Yeah.
Duck. Yeah, duck is good. Yeah. And Blue Wilderness is good. That's a good brand. Yeah.
Because I tried that with Annie first, but then she's like nitpicking at it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's because he's so used to eating dry food half the time.
Could be. Doesn't like the duck. I've had several cats that didn't like duck. So it could be the protein. You might want to try turkey or chicken or rabbit. A lot of them like rabbit. I just started mixing the raw turkey and chicken in. I was feeding only rabbit, but I wanted him to get a little more taurine. So I've been mixing this different brand, and I had to do it slowly. The very first, if I just put down the turkey after he's been eating nothing but rabbit, he didn't have anything to do with it. But as long as I mixed a little bit in and then a little bit more the next time, a little bit more the next time, now he's eating it fine. So again, it goes back to more about the change than it does. They really don't like that. So if you just go slow, that's why it's easier to switch dry to canned food and then canned to raw. Switching dry to raw is very difficult.
And then is there any type of wet food puzzles that are also good for cats? Because I cannot feed Annie any more dry food as a vet for me.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I wish there were. And here's what I do. you get a coffee mug and you put a little bit of wet food in the coffee mug with a handle, and then you lay it on a rubber mat so that, you know, it's not on a hard floor, but lay it, and when the food comes out, you can clean it, but they have to reach in the coffee mug and pull the wet food out so it becomes like a food puzzle. Those lick mats, you know, the slow feeding mats for dogs, those really aren't food puzzles for cats. Cats need more problem solving. That's a slow feeder, but it doesn't really give them mental stimulation. But I wish there were. I really, really, really wish there were. Now I do put the lick and lap in this, and he has to stick his foot in there and get it, and then lick it off of his foot. I do that. It's messy because then it's on his foot and he doesn't get it all off, and he's walking all over, and I've got little lick and lap footprints all over, but I have concrete floors, so it's a little easier to manage, but I do put it in there. Short of that, there aren't any great wet. And I look, when I go to Global Pet Expo, which is the large, you know, pet product exposition every year, I am always looking for wet food puzzles, and I've been working with Vitacraft. I told them the same thing. If you can come up with a wet food puzzle, then it's going to be awesome, because the industry needs it. It really needs it.
Or what about those like dry food puzzles, or those like little dents where you just move the top part or whatever?
Yeah, like these ones.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can't really, I mean, it's hard for them to get it out. I suppose they could. You just have to wash it, and there's a lot of little nicks and places in there. It might be difficult to keep clean. They need it. It's something the industry needs. We absolutely need wet food puzzles.
But you can probably get them out with like a toothbrush in those little corners.
Oh yeah, you probably could. Yeah, you could clean it with a toothbrush. Absolutely. Yeah. Mats. Oh yeah. So you were asking the mats for slowing down a cat who eats too fast, not too abrasive on their tongue. You know, I don't know. I've never used those slow feeding mats because I haven't, I mean, I always feed an appropriate amount of food at every feeding, so I don't really need to slow anybody down. I would worry about that. I mean, they're really made for dogs. Those slow feeding mats that's a dog thing.
Right, that's why I was concerned. And I only feed a half of a 3-ounce can at a time, but sometimes this is my, you know, my eats hers and everybody else's, but sometimes she just eats it so fast, occasionally it does come back up. So I've wondered about that.
What are you feeding?
Wellness, Performatrin Ultra, what they'll eat basically. Now this one's a little bit easier to feed. Tastefuls, Merrick, those are the ones that they will eat. I've tried the Lotus and first one of the first mates they will eat. But yeah. I mean, they're not terrible. They're not Fancy Feast or Friskies. They're better, you know, they're kind of in the middle, I guess you would probably consider of that as canned food, correct?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, even if Friskies is all a cat will eat or all a person can afford, then I'm much happier seeing them feed that than dry food.
Right. Okay.
Right. I mean, so, you know, I get that not everybody can afford to feed a quality canned food, but as long as they're eating, and that's really why I wanted to cover so much on byproducts today, because I want everybody to understand what that is. And it's not horrible. I mean, it's not like poisoning your cat. I mean, there have been instances of pets being poisoned from the drugs in meat, mostly dogs. I don't know if that's ever happened to a cat, but you know, it's not the horrible thing. It's much worse to feed a dry food diet than it is a low quality canned food diet. So whatever
when you
eat, and it sounds like a half of a 3-ounce can, that's a lot. Like this little guy, he has a weird condition where his sternum bone protrudes straight out. And I believe that it pushes on his stomach and is making it where he can't eat a lot in a setting. So he's one that will eat a little bit and then go away and eat a little bit. I've been feeding him a half of a 3-ounce can, and I think it's too much. I really think I need to feed him a quarter of a 3-ounce can and feed him twice as frequently.
I
Yeah.
can't do that though. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I would love to be able to do that, but that's just not always practical. I mean, that would require being home more than I can be home sometimes.
Yeah.
But when you talk about a good quality, you said the words good quality or high quality canned food. Did you mean something that does not include byproducts, or did you mean like there are specific brands that you would consider higher quality than others that even don't have byproducts?
Yes, I meant specifically without byproducts. That seems to be the
Okay.
biggest price differentiator. Canned
Yeah.
foods with byproducts are a lot cheaper than canned
Right.
foods without byproducts.
Right.
And so, yeah, that seems to be the main difference. But there
I
are all kinds of other quality issues like carb load, right? If they're high in carbohydrates, then they're also probably going to be cheaper because those ingredients are cheaper. And there's
Right.
lots of good brands. I get asked all the time, what brand? I'm like, there's lots of good brands. I'd much rather give you a list like I did today of things to avoid, and you just go read the ingredient labels and find one that you think your cat's going to like that doesn't have those things in it. Also,
Yeah, that was helpful.
when you go shopping at a pet food store, the big pet food stores, Petco and PetSmart and things, they have junk food aisles just like the grocery store, and they have high quality or organic food aisles basically. So when you go down the aisle and you find the Friskies and the Shiba and that kind of stuff, you're on the junk food aisle, and go find the other aisle that has the quality foods. They usually tend to lump them together, and that's then there's smaller independent chains. Like here where I am, there's at least 2 pet food stores that are like shopping in Whole Foods. You don't have to read an ingredient label when you go in that store. I know
That's the kind I work in.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
not going to be any byproducts in anything you pick up on the shelf. So I don't have to waste a lot of time. I just look at textures and protein sources and size of cans and things like that, and cost. And I don't have to waste time reading labels. So
That's comforting to know I'm kind of at least on the right track with the quality. Thank you so much for all of this information. I'm going to be able to share so much of this with my coworkers and my customers, and I really appreciate it.
great. Thanks for joining us, Nancy.
My pleasure. Oh,
Anybody else? Oh, we've
hello.
got Janine. Hi.
I forgot my camera was off. I've been cleaning the whole time we've been talking, or you've been talking.
Great. And who we have here? We've got Janine from Calgary Humane in Canada. Excellent. Welcome, Janine. Thanks for being here. And Doug's put a link in the chats too, that he's got a cat food. Doug, by the way, Doug Hines has catnewsheadlines.com. You guys should go check that out. He's got a lot of great resources on his website. So there's a link right there in the chats for canned foods, above average canned foods. Check that out as well. All right. Anything else before we wrap up? We're running way over, but this was an important webinar, so I wanted to make sure we dedicated as much time as you guys need for that. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Very much appreciate you joining. And if you want to end up again, if you haven't put your email in the chat bar and you want to be on our notification list, please just pop that in there right now, and I'll add you to our mailing list so that you can be informed of when these happen. All right. Thanks for joining us. Bye, everybody.